The Players' Championship last week was the latest snooker tournament in the snooker circuit as we really head into what is the business end of the snooker season. It was a tournament that had both Judd Trump and Ronnie O'Sullivan, the two outstanding performers of this season. But surprisingly, neither of them really made a dent in the tournament. For two players that have won 8 titles between them this season, neither of them reached the semi-finals of this event. But it was a week that belonged to the man in the picture, Mark Allen, picking up his 3rd title of the season, his 11th ranking title of his career. And what I want to look in more depth is the consistency that Mark Allen has found in recent years. This is, like I say, his 11th ranking title, but 6 of those 11 have come in the last 3 years. And it's sort of been in a transition period of Mark Allen where he's really changed the style of his game. And I think if you wanted to see what Mark Allen is as a player now, it was probably best demonstrated during this week. If you look at his first round match against Mark Williams, that was the kind of Mark Allen that has been known for ever since he's sort of burst into the scene and been a top 16 player for like the best part of the past 15 years. That ability just to score heavily and score quickly. That's what Mark Allen was renowned for. You know, if he was around the pink and the black spot and he had a few reds open, 9 times out of 10, he's making a frame winning break and he's making it in sort of 8 or 9 minutes. And then, yeah, like I said, that was best shown in his first round performance against Mark Williams, where he made 3 centuries in the first 3 frames. He made a couple of other 80 breaks in winning that match 6-3. And then fast forward to the final, and it was a very, very different Mark Allen. The final, didn't lack for drama, wasn't the best of quality, and I think the match finished just before midnight last night. But these are the kind of matches that Mark Allen was never really renowned for as someone that either enjoyed this style of match, but most importantly would win that kind of match. But the key to his success over the past year or two has been the fact that he is enjoying these battles and he is winning them on more frequent occasions. What has been interesting, I think, is that there's been a lot of more criticism headed Mark Allen's way, or sort of compliments that have been a little bit backhanded, particularly in the commentary box, where they're noting that he's slowed down. His average shot time is probably 2, 3, 4 seconds slower than it used to be. And he's certainly not the all-out attacking player that he once was. He's certainly much more measured. And, these are obviously valid observations, but they come across as criticisms, and I really don't think that they should be, because Mark Allen's success in recent years and the consistency that he's built up is entirely down to this style of game, and I don't really think it's fair to criticise him of that. The simple fact is, as I mentioned earlier, 6 of those 11 titles have come in the past 3 years, and he's run some other invitational tournaments in addition to those as well. That's been in a period of time where his game has slowed down and he's become more measured. If you look at the all-out attacking, free-flowing, high-scoring, quick Mark Allen, for 10 years he had won 5 ranking titles. Still a really good sort of record and good on the CV, but he never had the consistency anywhere near what he does now. So I feel like the criticism doesn't really have any weight, because he is getting the results and the consistency to back up this change of playing style. And whilst we are on this topic of average shot time, I do think people read into it maybe a little bit too much. The average shot time sort of calculator that was Snooker introduced 5 years ago was really to stop slow play. And on one hand, I do agree. I think if a player is playing every single match in a season and they're averaging something like 30, 35 seconds a shot, that is a little bit ridiculous. And, you definitely can play quicker than that. But I think trying to punish players for playing slower, if that is their natural game, isn't beneficial at all. For me personally, I've always loved the contrast of styles. I love O'Sullivan, I love Judd Trump, I players like Rob Milkins, Tiptoe Anu, you know, ironically Mark Allen of sort of 6-7 years ago. The really fast players are incredible to watch. But I think snooker's balanced out by the more methodical players, players that sometimes average in the low 20 seconds. The finalist, Zhang Anda, is certainly one of those players. And I think, if you're a quick player or, you play deliberately slow to try and get under your opponent's skin, that's a little bit frustrating and that should really be cut out. But there are players where playing at sort of 26, 27, 28 seconds a shot is their natural rhythm. And yeah, contrast of styles is what sport is all about, not just snooker, just in general. Imagine if football, just every single team just didn't park the bus and just said, we're going to attack you, we're going to attack you. Hey, you'll get high scoring matches, but it's not going to be beneficial to certain teams. And it's, sport's all about winning. I know, Sean Murphy in particular is a big advocate of, snooker needs to put fans first. But I don't know. I think when it comes to sport, it's all about winning, and you do that by whatever means necessary, as long as you're not cheating. And yes, shot clocks in particular get talked about too much. Mark Allen's slowed down, and he's reaping the rewards of that. Zhang Anda's always been a pretty methodical player, and now he's suddenly found confidence. He doesn't need to change his style of play just because he's now a winner and he's been on the TV tables more often where he's under the spotlight. Play your natural game. The only time, I personally get frustrated with Neil Robertson if he's suddenly playing at 28, 29 seconds a shot, because I know that he's better when he's around the 22, 23 second mark. So if I see him in the low 20s, I know that he's either not confident or he's playing poorly or he's playing in a type of match that he routinely loses more often than not. So yeah, if shot clocks or average shot times are definitely interesting to see how a player is actually playing, particularly with Neil Robertson. But yeah, there's no need to say everyone needs to be playing at 21 seconds a shot, and if you're not, you're too boring for the sport. That's ridiculous. Contrasting styles, it's what it's all about. Watching Judd Trump and Ronnie O'Sullivan play each other is amazing, and they're always, amazing matches. But some of the biggest rivalries in this sport, have come from contrast of styles, i.e. Ronnie O'Sullivan, Mark Selby, two completely different players. But when they play each other and they're at their best, that contrast is what makes those matches so fascinating. But yeah, stepping away from that small tangent, we are at a point of the season where every tournament sort of gets micro-analysed even more to see which players are playing well, which players need room for improvement, because everyone has more than one eye on Sheffield now. We're less than 2 months away from that kicking off. And there's really not much tournaments left for anyone that's not in form to find form. Already, it doesn't matter what happens between now and the World Championship. We know O'Sullivan and we know Judd Trump are going to be two of the favourites going into it, given just the incredible seasons that they've had. Mark Allen now, 3 titles in the bag. He's going to be in the mix. Obviously reached the semi-finals for the first time in about 15 years last year. And he's developed the kind of game that is very adaptable to the World Championship. It's very much in the Mark Selby mould. And, Zhang Anda as well. If you had told me 12 months ago that Zhang Anda could be a genuine contender for the World Championship, I would have laughed. But he's going to have to be. This man isn't going away. That win wasn't a fluke. He had just reached a final before the International Championship, lost it to Judd Trump, even though he was quite far ahead in that final. A few weeks later, he goes to China, wins, gets into the Masters. He's a seed at the UK Championship. He's, guaranteed to be in all of these tournaments. And yeah, he's backed it up again with a huge week. He beat Noppon Sankang in a decider. He beat John Higgins, even though John Higgins came back at him. He beat Mark Selby in a decider, even though Mark Selby came back at him. And he ran Mark Allen really close in the final as well. He, as I've already alluded to, he'll be disappointed with his overall performance in that final because he did miss chances. But that disappointment should be, taken on the chin. It's an incredible week in an incredible season. He's going to be there as well. But there are other players as well. John Higgins, Alan McManus said it actually a lot in commentary. John Higgins is playing well, really well actually, but it is just those odd misses that are creeping into his game, which is stopping him from winning titles. And 4-time world champion, you can never discount him at the Crucible. But in sort of best of nines, best of 11s, he's making mistakes. Those mistakes just get magnified even more in the longer matches because you've got more time to make mistakes. But yeah, I think his overall game is really, really good. And someone's going to have to match his level to beat him. But yeah, it is just those careless errors that are stopping him. Mark Selby, he's had a quiet season. He started off the season really well, but it's been really quiet for the past few months. Looked close. Well, actually, I say close. That match against O'Sullivan was just about as well as a player can play in terms of just all round. He tied O'Sullivan in knots in the safety play. His long potting was incredible. His scoring was there. It doesn't matter who you are and how well you're playing. To beat O'Sullivan 6-0 is a feat not many players will ever do. And yeah, Selby was brilliant in that match. He had a pretty sluggish start in his first round match against Barry Hawkins, but he's finished it off strongly. And then the absolute rout against O'Sullivan was a kind of performance that people take note of. But he couldn't quite follow that up in the semi-finals, which will maybe irritate him slightly. Take nothing away from Zhang Anda. He went 4-0 up and he was playing an incredible snooker. Selby still managed, claw his way back into the tie. When it goes to a decider, if someone comes back from 4-0 down to 5-all, you kind of fancy them to win that decider. But all credit to Zhang, he held it together. But yeah, if you're a fan of Selby, you'll be really encouraged. You have to be really encouraged by that performance against O'Sullivan. And even more encouraged by the fact that Selby, in his post-match interview was saying he's found something in the practice table that's working for him. He's going to stick to that, whatever change that is. I don't know if it's technical or mental. Whatever change that is, he's sticking to it. And if Mark Selby has found something and he's confident going into Sheffield, that typically only goes one way. He won a tournament towards the end of last season. And as soon as he won that, I put money on him to win the World Championship. And, but for an inspired performance by Luca Brissell, he would have done last season. So yeah, players are hitting form, and it is the perfect time to hit form. It's the worst time to lose form. And look, I haven't even mentioned Ali Carter as well. He's had an incredible season, and he's maintained that this week as well. Big win against Judd Trump in the quarterfinals. Another semi-final on his CV. He's a player that enjoys the World Championship. Twice a finalist there, of course. So, from a World Championship perspective, it's really hotting up. There's a few players that we maybe would have expected to have played well that haven't. But in general, there are a lot of high-quality players playing well, a few underdog stories. And yeah, I just can't wait for the World Championship to start because there's so many possibilities and so many storylines that could present itself. But yeah, for the players that aren't playing particularly well, there's only a few tournaments left. So they really are going to have to, get a move on pretty quickly. But yeah, the World Championship is something that I will talk about more and more when we get into April, and we're only a couple of weeks away from the tournament starting. For now, though, it is all about Mark Allen. And for any critics, for any haters of the way he's going about his business, this is just another week that he silences them. He has found something that works for him. And whether that's exciting, whether it's entertaining, whether you consider it to be boring or worse than he used to be, if I was Mark Allen, I would not give one single damn. Sport is all about winning. It's all about consistency. Mark Allen is doing both of those incredibly well with his new style. And, if it keeps bringing him results, long may it continue. But yeah, Tour takes a little bit of a breather now. We've got some Championship League action. Then we go to the maybe quite controversial Saudi Arabia Masters for an invitational event over there. But then after that, it's just the World Open, the Tour Championship, and then finally the big one. Take care during the break, and I'll be back to review some more snooker action as soon as it happens. Cheers.